Welcome to Living to Inspire, and I am Marta. I'm not even going to waste much of your time. We're going to get into this video. So this is a sequel to Chronicles of Motherhood, second episode of being pregnant in BMT. So upon telling my mother that I was joining the military, of course that kind of went a bit questionable. Her question was, what happens if you come back in a box? And honestly enough, I wanted to blast out and say, not everybody that goes into the military comes back in a box. But in that moment, I had to put myself into my mother's shoes and understand how it feels to have your child come to you and say, Mama, I'm going into the military, knowing that something might happen wherever it is that you be. And honestly enough, I might be getting my daughter back in a box, you know. So I just kind of like kept quiet now, and I let her say her say. But the most important thing and the most amazing thing that I love, which I love about my mother, is she makes it about you to make the final decision yourself. And so the one thing she said, if this is what you want, then go ahead. And I came upstairs, I gave the packet to my father. I was like, okay, kindly help me out fill this information, because I hardly know much about my family, which is very questionable, but yes, that's me. And after he filled out the packet, I took the packet back to the recruiter. And then came the day when I had to go spend the night at a hotel, because the following day or morning, you're usually given a physical. So I did that, and my mother wasn't quite pleased, but and that's another talk of another day. I passed my physicals, came back of course, and then the time was approaching rather for the day that I would actually get shipped out to BMT, which was May 7th of 2019. However, a week prior to me shipping out, I met this particular young man at school. My friend and I were standing at the entrance of the university. I don't know what we were doing. We were just giggling and goofing around, I suppose. And to my right, sort of like stood an entourage of, you know, students of different ethnicities. And there seemed to be a leader who was like explaining and pointing things out. So immediately to our understanding was that they were having an orientation at school. And okay, so I was getting ready to ship out. So for that reason, on that particular day, I decided I was going to take my friend out for lunch to Panera, because I knew I wasn't going to see her for quite some time. It was sort of like just a gift for me to say, hey, thank you for what you've done and whatnot. And we took my friend's car, who was very kind enough to give me his car, knowing that I'm not on his insurance information, and he trusted me not to create any accidents. So we got into the car, and on the way out of the school, we saw the same particular young man walking towards sort of like the exit as well. So immediately I thought, oh, maybe he needs a ride. And it's not every day in America that somebody would stop their car and say, do you need a ride? Actually, they never stop for you unless it's in extreme situations. And even then, they still don't, because it's about me, myself, and I here in America. So I stopped the car in the middle of the road, and I rolled the window down. I was like, hey, do you need a ride? And he sort of like pointed to his car, and he was like, they were like, oh, sorry, we thought you needed a ride, but I guess you've got your own ride. Doesn't matter now. We kept going and minding our own business. So after driving for a bit of a distance, I look in the back rearview mirror, and his car is following us. And I'm like, that's just nothing. Keep on going, the same car's following us, keep on following. And we're like, okay. So I was like, hey, do you know this car? The person we just stopped to ask if they needed a ride. And she's like, yes. It's like, oh, they're following us. And she goes, why are they following us? Kind of a thing, you know, because we loved imitating Nigerian accents. And I was like, oh, I don't know, whatever. So we kept on going to Panera. We got there, I parked, and of course, because I wasn't an experienced driver then, I parked anyhow, anywhere, whatever. He also parked his car. He comes out, he goes, do you drive? And I was like, yeah, I do, but it's not an everyday thing. So he kind of like made fun of my driving experience. So we went into Panera. My friend went to order. I gave her my card. She went to order, and him and I sat at a table talking about life, talking about how he came to the United States, what his plans are in the United States, how long he's been here, you know, just sort of like comfortable questions, you know, just getting to know the person. And we went back, and I gave my friend's car back, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going home now. He was like, well, let me drop you. And I'm like, no, don't, I'll take public transportation. Okay. And we exchanged numbers, started talking, whatever. I decided to go over his house that night, and the inevitable happened. I remember that night like it was yesterday. It wasn't even feeling at all. But anyways, fast forward, I go to BMT. Interesting fact, I started gaining weight towards my ship out date, and my sergeant sort of like started getting worried. And you know, his understanding was that, oh, I was probably just eating too much. So he put me on a strict diet. I hardly ate things with salt. I didn't eat fast foods particularly. So on the last day of my weigh-in, just to ensure that I was with the right weight, the commander asked me, and she goes, are you pregnant? And I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. You know, because I wasn't thinking of it. I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. She goes, are you sure? And I'm like, I am sure. I am not pregnant. So she goes, okay. Just say you're not pregnant, you're not pregnant. Took my little bag, got on the bus, went to a hotel. The next day, I got weighed, my pee was tested, nothing, no pregnancy hormones, nothing, you guys. It was just clear. And it's not even like I sneaked in somebody else's pee, because that was my mother's understanding. No, you literally pee, and somebody's watching you as you're peeing, because that's how strict they are, and that's how, you know, they want somebody to be actually authentic about what they're doing, you know, and they want to ensure that they're choosing a good peanut out of the bad peanuts to actually join armed forces, if that makes sense. And everything, I passed again. My weight was just great. And we went into BMT. Guys, BMT was somewhat amazing and somewhat exhausting. My flight was a very interesting flight. I had wonderful friends and I had interesting people. But I can surely tell you that on the first day you had MTIs yelling at you, do this, do that, and you had people crying because they were getting yelled at. It was an interesting moment, to be honest, or interesting experience. I'll go much into detail later on if anybody ever wants to hear the detailed, like what actually happens at BMT. But either ways, I felt fatigued all the time when I was in BMT. I felt like, I can't do this. But at the same time, I knew that I could do it, but I was just lazy. We could literally be going from where, I don't know whether I should call them dormitories or what exactly. So where we slept, like where our daily lives were, and where we had to do our physicals, where church was, there was like this bridge we had to go over. And I hated that bridge because every single time we approached it, I'm like, oh my God, we have to march over this thing, especially if we had that male MTI of ours who was always making us do stuff, running around or whatever. Half of the time I was just in the back of my like, I can't do this. For me, I thought like, I don't know. I used to question myself because I thought, because I would just ask myself to say, you can run, you can do push-ups without you feeling this tired. What is going on? And I was actually getting worried because I hadn't seen my menstrual cycle in a while, in a long time. I could see my fellow mates, like, this one is on our cycle, that one is on our cycle, this one is taking birth control pills, and I'm just there like, huh? What's going on? And I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine, and she goes, you don't carry Billy. And I was like, no, don't say that, I'm not pregnant. So the last final physical test that we took, I actually passed it. I did a lot of push-ups and a lot of sit-ups. I don't quite remember the number, but I know it was 50 something push-ups and 60 something sit-ups whilst being pregnant, mind you. I felt very fatigued and I felt a lot of pain in my chest, and I literally started hyperventilating on the floor. So when they took me to the little clinic or the hospital rather, I told them, they were like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely." And I was like, "Oh, by the way, I've not seen my menstrual cycle in a while." And it goes, "We'll see what's going on with that." And I'm like, "Okay." So they went, they did the blood test. I was laying there for quite a while. I was irritated because I just wanted to get back to my flight and celebrate with them. And that was the day that we're actually going to take the exam, and as well as wear our blue uniform, which was like a glorious thing and still is today. And eventually the nurse comes in and she goes, "So we tested your blood and your results came out that you're pregnant. You're 8 weeks pregnant." And I sat there and literally everything around me, the world, suddenly just stopped. And there was so much silence in the room and in my life that I could not believe that I'd fallen pregnant. I sat there and I'm staring at her and she goes, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "No, I didn't. What did you say?" She goes, "You're pregnant. You're 8 weeks pregnant." And so she kind of like laid me back down and she put the little jelly, I don't know what you call it, liquid on my belly to sort of like show me the yolk, the sac, not the yolk, the sac of where the baby was. And I saw, the beating of it. And I looked and I said, "What if I don't want it?" And she goes, "Well, unfortunately, we're unable to perform such of a task here. But once you go out, you can have that done if you like, And she cleaned me up and I was just laying there. And she left the room and she goes, "Let me go grab some tissues. I'll be back." And I'm like, "Okay." And she came back in the room with a box of tissues, expecting to find me in a very horrendous state with my tears and just drowning in sorrow, crying and whatever. But I was just sitting there, thinking of what my mother would say, thinking of what my family would say if I told them that I'd fallen pregnant for a man that I hardly had known, for a man that I had met for only a moment, for a man that I'd only slept with one time. That's all it takes, one time, guys, to get pregnant. Just one time. And she looked at me weirdly because, honestly enough, that moment I should have been crying, but I didn't. And I remember for the longest time I described my pregnancy and the beautiful thing that was growing in my womb as an it thing. And the only thing I could think of was abortion. Literally. I won't lie to you. Because just the way that in the manner that this pregnancy was conceived, that night was a very questionable night. A moment when my pride was absolutely stolen from me. A moment when I had no control over it whatsoever. And in this particular moment, the following moment after that, I was going to be going to the military, then graduating and having a life of my own, having my life set. And I get pregnant. Wow. That's amazing. I got back to my flight and I could not tell my flight friends or my flight mates what had happened to me or the fact that I was found pregnant. It was so embarrassing and so shameful. So I told them that I was leaving because of G6PD. Don't ask what that is. Even I don't know. But I had to come up with something. I was like, yeah, I'm leaving for that reason. I don't feel too well. They found this, they found that. Mind you, this was like the little pamphlets we had gotten while I was at the clinic, and I just looked in there and immediately had come up with a lie. Well, that's all I have for you today. There might be another episode, the last episode, of how I was able to Jesus, English has failed me. Conceive the little one who is very much alive and here with me, but she's apparently sleeping upstairs. So, anyways, that's all I have for you today. I hope you had fun. I hope you listened, and I hope this is a lesson to you all, as well as it has been a lesson to me. Don't forget to always hashtag living to inspire. Much love and God bless. Cheers, everyone.